Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this video is going to be covering all the champions that are going to be getting nerfed, buffed, rebalanced in the up-and-coming 2.2 patch. I'm going to give you a first reaction to actually knowing exactly what the list is, and then I'll go over some of my initial thoughts on what it actually could mean. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so first things first, let me get you the actual list of the champions that are going to be rebalanced in the next patch. It's going to be long-winded, hang with me. We've got Drexlar, Rhodos, Siphi, Tormin, Duchess, Madame Ceres, Coronar, Blind Seer, Warlord, Krutraxa, Gurgo, Hakorn, Dracomorph, Gerptuk, Abyss, Bellinor, Astrolith, Norog, Bistafus, Candrafon, Elder Skarg, Alika, Canoness, Hope, Rowan, Snorting Thug, Taurus, Suai, Maeve, Tashada, Yotun, Missionary, Bonekeeper, Pitiless One, Hexia, Bushi, and Azur. So yeah, quite the list of champions being reworked, and it's going to be the biggest rebalance that Plarium has ever done since they started Raid. So definitely excited to see where this goes. Hopefully it's good changes. It looks like it's going to be a blend of nerfs and buffs and rebalancing, possibly just AI changes. We don't know exactly. We're supposed to find out the exact details of what these changes are going to be in a press release coming next week. But now, really quickly, I will pull up each one of these champions and give you my initial thoughts on what I think is going to happen in terms of if it's a nerf or a buff. For Drexlar, it is probably going to be a buff incoming because he is the champion that is featured as the first fragment summon for the Bazaar gold bars in terms of acquiring the fragments and getting him over the course of 100 days and farming up. So he's kind of a front and center champion in the raid community right now, and I bet they're going to go ahead and buff him and give him a little bit of love. He's decent early to mid game, kind of falls off end game, and is mainly used. Rotos the Lost Room. This guy's probably going to be getting a nerf if I had to guess, because he's been one of the strongest non-void legendaries in PvP, so there'll probably be some sort of nerf coming in for him. Honestly, all they would need to do is like stop the block revive would be a good start, and kind of see where that brings him. I hope they don't, I hope when they rebalance champions, they don't completely ruin them. I would start with very small nerfs, because I think the better route to go generally in these things is to rebalance things up instead of rebalancing things down, because then you hate to see people invest in a champion with books and all that stuff and then watch them become useless. So I'm really hoping that they're careful with the nerfs, and you have a little bit more room to work with in terms of buffs. For Siphi, again, similar to Rhodos, one of the strongest champions in the game, especially in PvP, and really good in a lot of different areas as well. So probably going to be a nerf coming for Siphi. For Tormin, I don't know the route they're going to go, because I don't think Tormin is like overpowered. And I think Tormin is very important to the health of the game, because he's one of the best champions for defending the speed meta. So I maybe just a change and not really a nerf or a buff, because I think he's in a pretty decent spot, and it is important to keep Tormin good, because it makes defense teams a lot more viable. For Duchess, probably going to be on the nerf end, because she is a very strong champion. I don't think necessarily super broken, but we'll probably be seeing a slight adjustment in the nerf department. Madame Ceres is probably the best void epic in the game, especially for PvP. She is an absolutely insane arena champion. Basically a void legendary. She's better than a few of the void legendaries, a lot of them actually. So Ceres is probably going to be getting some sort of nerf or rebalance if I had to go by this list. For Coronar, it may just be some sort of change or tweak, because I think he was in a decent spot. He's really strong. He's a great champion, but I didn't think he was like broken or needing attention. So I don't really know what to think about Coronar. Blind Seer seems like a void legendary that is generally a little underwhelming and will probably be getting a buff. Warlord is an insanely strong legendary, so if I had to guess on him, I would say he's probably going to be getting some sort of slight nerf. Krutraxa seems like one that's in a decent spot. She's strong in certain scenarios, but in general, maybe getting a little bit of a buff in my opinion. Gergo is all right. I don't think he was super high on the priority in terms of nerfing or buffing, but if I had to guess, he'd probably get a slight buff. Hawkhorn Smashlord is a very good immunity set defensive cleanser. So again, another one that wasn't super high on the rebalancing list in my opinion, but if I had to guess, he may get a slight rework, like maybe his block debuffs will be 1 turn instead of 2, or maybe he'll get a slight buff. Hawkhorn is kind of similar to Tormund. I can't really predict the exact direction they'll go with him. Dracomorph is one of the best legendaries in the game, so obviously he's probably getting some sort of nerf, but this is a good spot to make my point where I think Dracomorph is an example of a champion that is designed properly. He's very good against the clan boss, and he's a good dungeon debuffer, but the trade-off is he's not meta in PvP. He's not going to be used in the higher tiers of arena or be like game-breaking in PvP, so he's a champion that is well-balanced. He's good in certain areas of the game, very strong in certain roles, like against the spirit, clan boss, or really anybody that's not force. He's going to be extremely strong, but the trade-off is he's not very good in PvP, so I think Dracomorph was fine. Being strong in PvE is not a big deal, so I hope they don't nerf him too bad, and because I think he's a very well-designed champion who performs very strong in the roles that he should perform strong in. Gerptuck Mossbeard was a fusion event from about 3 or 4 months ago, and unfortunately didn't really see a whole lot of play outside of extremely niche endgame strategies where you really synergize masteries and a specific team to work completely around him. You could do some fun things in the spider and the dragon and speed farming setups and stuff like that, but a very underwhelming champion in terms of being a legendary that the majority of people just put in their vault. Abyss is one that is probably going to be on the buff list. Bellinor is definitely going to be on the buff side of things if I had to guess, and now he can be all right in certain scenarios, but in terms of being a void legendary, definitely not good enough to carry that banner of being a void legendary in the game, so I'm gonna assume he's getting a buff. Astrolith making it on to the rebalance list again. They did change her pretty significantly once, but it wasn't really enough to bring her into the meta and seeing a bunch of play, so she is probably on the buff list. Norog is another one that I thought was in a decent spot. I didn't really see a reason to prioritize buffing or nerfing him. If I had to guess, maybe a slight buff or maybe a slight rework, but he's another one that I thought was in a decent spot, so I don't know which direction they're going to go for sure on this one. Bistafis is probably going to be on the slight buff list. He does have the highest base attack in the game, I think, at 1795, which is kind of a cool thing to have. But in general, he's not super used in the end game, so probably a slight buff. Candrafon is going to definitely be on the rework / buff list. He's one of the bottom 5 legendaries in terms of where most people think he slots in. Elder Skarg is also probably one that's going to be on the buff list. Now that does it for the legendary champions. Really quickly, I will go through the epics as well, just in case you are curious. Alika is on the epic list and is probably going to be getting a slight buff. In terms of an epic, she is okay, but the problem is she takes so many books that it's tough to justify the investment, but she's really not that trash. I think there's a lot of epics worse than her, but probably a slight buff if I had to guess. Canoness is probably going to be getting a slight buff. Hope also probably getting a slight buff. Rowan is all right. There's some interesting strategies you can do with Rowan and the 108 base speed and all that. Pretty decent. So wouldn't have been the highest of priority in terms of epics. It looks like on the epic list, most of them are generally underwhelming ones. So most of the epic side of things is probably going to be buffs. Rowan is probably getting a slight buff, but she wasn't a complete trash can. And now that I think about it, yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about the epics now that I read through the list. The rest of them are going to be Snorting Thug, Taurus, Suwai, Maeve, Tashada, Yotun Missionary, Bonekeeper, Pitiless One, Hexia, Bushi, and Azur. So most of them are going to be getting buffs. I don't see an epic on the list that is super broken. Now, Madame Saris, funny enough, was up towards the legendary side of things, so that really lets you know about where they probably think of her in terms of being, like, in the order they gave us the champions. Saris is like the 5th or 6th one, up there with all the legendaries. So I'm gonna guess that Saris is probably getting a nerf, unfortunately. But I think it's fine to have strong champions in the game as long as they fill an interesting role. Like I said about Dracomorph, I think he's totally fine being strong in the game. I don't think anybody's upset about him being strong because there's a trade-off to him being strong. Similar to Bad Alcazar, very good in certain content, but the trade-off is not very good in PvP. So if a champion is very good in PvP and not as good as like Dracomorph in the clan boss, at least we're balancing roles, and things tend to balance out and have a good blend of where champions are good. So hopefully the nerfs aren't super strong. Hopefully they go the route of most of the stuff being buffs to slowly kind of rebalance things and shake things up. So that's kind of my overall thoughts on the list and the big rebalancing that's coming. So definitely let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I really enjoy reading your input and using that to learn more about the game and the community. So as always, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.